Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Back in 2016, Roxley Games published Santorini, which to this day is still one of the best abstract strategy games ever made. Well, they just launched a Kickstarter that has a new Pantheon edition that has a plethora of new gods, revamped rules, and stunning new components. But today, I'm here to focus on a new expansion called the Riddle of the Sphinx. Now, it's a cooperative expansion with an adventure book that takes you to unique scenarios across the Greek Isles. Now, it's for 1 to 4 players, takes 30 minutes to play, it's for ages 8 and up, and still published by Roxley Games. Now, it's on Kickstarter right now, so I'm going to show you how it works, and I'll see you on the other side. This is a Kickstarter preview, so all the art and components you see here are not final. These are prototypes. To see the most up-to-date art and components, check the Kickstarter link in the description of this video. Now, I'm not going to teach you the base game of Santorini. I've already done a review that teaches you that. If you're interested in the base game, you can click the little eye in the top corner there or click the link in the description of this video because I'm going to be focusing on how to play the Riddle of the Sphinx. Now, the Riddle of the Sphinx comes with this book of riddles. It is a nice spiral-bound book that's going to go through the different puzzles that you can encounter. But before we get there, let's show you the adventure map. This is a map of different areas that you can go to, and you can actually start at any of them, but once you're in one, it's best to go through them in that order because they have a story that sort of goes along with it. Now, at the beginning, it is actually best to start with the Paradise Isles because it actually has a tutorial to help you walk through, and then the first 4 puzzles there, or the riddles, if you will. But again, you could sort of, after you're done with that one, or even before, if you really wanted to, you could jump into any of these and start working your way through those. Now, here's the page open up to the tutorial section. There's actually a whole section of sort of rules and actually walks you through playing turn for turn of the tutorial. But let me just show you in general how this Riddle of the Sphinx works. Now, you can see here that each of the scenarios is going to have sort of a printed setup, and you're going to set up the game in a specific way. So not only is it going to look something like this when it's all set up, now each riddle has specific gods that you'll be using for that riddle, and you'll shuffle them up and put them up on a display. In this case, there's only 3, so all 3 of them are available to us at the beginning, but these are specified at the beginning of each riddle. Now I'll show you later how you can actually add more to these with strategy as to which ones. We'll get to that later. Now, this specific riddle has 2 objectives. To complete the first objective, you need to get 3 silver coins. To get the second one done, you do get that single gold coin. Now, as soon as you have finished all the objectives, some of them will have more than this, then you have finished the game, if you will, and you're going to be able to do some cool things afterwards, which I'll show you in just a moment. But for example, here we have objectives 1. We need to get these 3 silver coins, and you'll see that these coins are set up in different ways on the board. Like this one says, hey, there's a coin here. If you put a level 1 building, you'll get it. Same for this one. You can see just on the other end of that. This one already starts with a block, but says as soon as you put a second block on here, second level, then you'll get that. So in order to complete the first one, we need to build a level 1 here, a level 1 here, and a level 2 here. The last goal is to build a level 3 and a dome on top of it. So that's what we're trying to do to finish this riddle. So let's walk through how you might do this just to show you the basics of how the game works. Now on your turn, you have 1 of 3 options. Now the game also starts with a certain amount of blocks in the stockpile that you're able to use. So we only are able to build a level 2 and a level 1 spot out there. But one of the things you could do is you can select a god. You can take any one of these here, take it and put it in front of you, and then if there was another one from the draw pile, it would replace that. So the first player is going to go ahead and take this. Now when you take a god, it's going to actually show you a block to place on there. It's also going to give you a power, and it's going to give you a quest. Now the player that took this has the ability to take this power and finish the quest. However, this block comes on here. Any player can use this block, but you want to be really judicious about it because as soon as this block is used, this god power goes away, or this god card, which means the player that has this in front of them won't be able to finish the quest or do the power. So usually you want to strategically use when that block is there, but that would have been the end of that first player's turn. Now let's say it's the next player's turn, it's the blue player. They're going to move one of their workers from here to here as in normal Santorini fashion, and they're going to build here in normal Santorini fashion. Remember, we only have certain blocks that were in our stockpile. Level 1 was one of them. We're going to build it here. Now notice that just needed a level 1 block. So we just completed 1/3 of our objective because now we can place that here. Again, 1/3 of our objective 1 is now completed. Now let's go back to the other player. Now we have this set up for a 2-player game, but there is our different setup ways that you do that for different player counts. We're at 1 to 4. They all have very specific ways of setting up depending on the player count. This is just a 2-player game. So this one is going to move up here, and then they're going to build here. Now look, this one already had a level 1 block, but it needed a level 2. If you remember, a level 2 was the last block that we had in the stockpile. So they're going to go ahead and build that there, because they did. They have now completed the second part of this first objective. One more, we'll complete it, and we will get a reward. Now, normally it would be the end of that player's turn, but look at this. The god power they had said, your worker that builds may build a second time in a different space neighboring the worker. Remember, this is the one they moved, this is where they built. They can now build here, and they took the block that was on top of that god's card that it came with, and they're gonna build it here. All this needed was a level 1, so they were able to place this here, and now this objective is completed, and what that reward does is it gives a dome to the stockpile for any player to use. And the quest was done here. So the default quest is when you clear this while using its power, which we did, we used its power, which cleared this block, then we get to get any block there that we want. So we'll add a level 3. And now that this has been used, the block has come off. Regardless of who used the block, this card is discarded out of the game. So let's now say the blue player moves up here and they want to build here. Well, we have a level 3 now, so they'll remove this coin temporarily. They'll put that on there, and because this needs to get a dome on there, so the blue player is done. And now this player is going to move diagonally to here, and then they're going to build the dome here, which completes the gold coin from that second objective, because you're able to place a dome on there. So that allows them to complete the second objective, and they've now finished this tutorial. Now, since we did the Paradise Isles, we did this tutorial, we got both objectives. We would color those both in, which would give us 2 things to do right now. Now, it's interesting to point out that much like in video games, like Overcooked, for example, you can maybe do this next one, right? And if you get objective 1 and 2, but you don't get the third one, the star, the ace one, that's really hard to do, you can always anytime you get one objective, you can go to the next tutorial, the next puzzle. But you can always come back. So let's say we do this next one and we get 1 and 2, but we don't get this ace, the star. Later on, or even right away, we could play this one again to try to get another one that might help us unlock something else, because there's also a constellation tree. All here are a bunch of different gods with their god powers. And starting at Polaris, which is the center, since we completed 2 of the objectives, we get to color in any 2 of these from Polaris. So let's say we colored this one in, and then we colored this one in. Well, now both of these gods are actually tied to Polaris. So we have 2 favors. You'll see these hearts. And you'll notice that these favors actually will allow us to later on add that specific god to a certain scenario, giving you those powers. Now also, you'll see divine gifts. There's 4 of them on this constellation tree. If you're able to color in all 4 points of this, and it still connects back to Polaris, you're going to get an ongoing gift that you're able to use in every riddle for the rest of the game. Now let's look at a different one. This is riddle number 3. Look at this. It takes up both of the boards pretty much all the way, and it has a little starting ones that are finished. There's also some bridges that you place here. Now these allow you to move from here to here, but you can't sort of build across and things like that. Now, a couple things to note. I talked about player count earlier. This shows you, like, depending on the player count, you'd use certain amounts of people for each of the different colors. 3-player, for example, every one of the players gets their own color, but then there's a red one, which is a wanderer, which anyone can use on their turn, but it can't be used 2 turns in a row, for example. So it shows you the setup, how you would use this for all the player counts. Now, I mentioned that you'll get favors as you unlock the different gods on those constellations. And like here, in many of the setups, it would say spend 1 favor from each of those gods by shading in their hearts, and then you'd essentially add them. Now, each of the scenarios have certain gods that you will put in the deck anyway, but this will allow you to add more of them depending on the ones that you've unlocked. And so that's how you're sort of like building up these different abilities into your, basically the draw deck for the god powers for this specific riddle. Now up until the point, I've only shown you 2 of the 3 actions you could take. I showed you build and move, which is one of your options, and I showed you taking a god, which is another option. The third option you have, and you usually use this when you're kind of stuck, is you play the game of Sphinx. Now it's a game of chance where this gets set up like this, and then you roll this die. In this case, it's green. If I rolled a green, I would be able to take this, and this symbol obviously allows me to take any block or a dome and put it in the stockpile. Right? And so now I have a little bit more options there. Maybe I roll a pink. Now I get this block and I add it to the stockpile. Let's say I roll again and it ends up being one that is a skull. Well, if you get a skull, you have to lose one of your workers. And if everyone loses all their workers, it's one way to end the game and basically stop that specific riddle. So that's pretty much it. I pretty much showed you how you play Riddle of the Sphinx in general, but check out the Kickstarter link to see everything else. Well, there you have Santorini Riddle of the Sphinx. And as I showed in the overview, not only are you trying to complete objectives of scenarios, but also unlocking new gods and divine gift powers to use for the rest of the scenarios. Now, if you'd like to see the most up-to-date art and components and all the different pledge levels available, you can click the link below me in the description of this video. Now, that's going to take you directly to the Kickstarter project page, and I'm sure that Roxley Games would love your support.